You've been told that mainstream automotive history covers all the important vehicles worth knowing about. But what if I told you that some of the strangest, most spectacular failures in automotive history have been completely erased from our collective memory? Cars so bizarre and so terrible that the companies who made them have spent millions trying to make you forget they ever existed. In this video, we're exposing 21 automotive disasters that car manufacturers hoped would stay buried forever. Vehicles so poorly conceived that they nearly bankrupted century-old companies. And trust me, the cars on this list will make you question everything you thought you knew about automotive design. From three-wheel death traps that rolled over during basic turns to luxury vehicles that couldn't even keep their doors closed, these failures represent the darkest corners of automotive history. The number one most failed car on our list was so bad that fewer than 500 made it to North America, and those that did were mercifully hidden away by embarrassed owners. Watch every second of this countdown, because this isn't just automotive trivia, it's a masterclass in how not to design, build, and market vehicles. Miss any of these cautionary tales, and you'll never fully understand why today's cars are built the way they are. Number 21. Chevrolet SSR 2003 to 2006. Kicking off our countdown at number 21 is the Chevrolet SSR, a vehicle that couldn't decide if it wanted to be a pickup truck, a convertible, or a hot rod. Chevy engineers apparently thought, let's combine all three and see what happens. The result was a bloated, confused mess that pleased absolutely no one. With its retractable hardtop adding massive weight, the SSR was painfully slow despite having a V8 engine. It couldn't haul anything substantial, couldn't corner well, and cost nearly $40,000 when new. Critics immediately panned it for its impractical design and underwhelming performance. The SSR looked like something a child would draw if asked to combine a 1950s pickup with a modern sports car. Chevrolet mercifully pulled the plug after just 3 years and fewer than 25,000 units. Today, they're curiosities at best, reminders that sometimes the worst ideas make it all the way to production. Before we continue with our countdown, if you're enjoying this trip through automotive disaster, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss our weekly deep dives into car culture, restoration projects, and automotive history. Number 20. Dodge Challenger 1978 to 1983. Number 20 on our list isn't just a bad car, it's a legendary nameplate dragged through the mud. When most people hear Dodge Challenger, they think of the iconic muscle car that dominated American roads in the early 1970s. But from 1978 to 1983, Dodge committed automotive sacrilege by slapping the Challenger name on something entirely different. This Challenger was actually a rebadged Mitsubishi Galant Lambda, a front-wheel drive coupe with a measly 2.6-liter engine producing just 105 horsepower at best. Imagine the disappointment of muscle car fans walking into Dodge dealerships expecting the next evolution of American performance, only to find this underpowered Japanese import masquerading under a legendary name. It wasn't necessarily a terrible car for what it was, but calling this imposter a Challenger was like naming a goldfish great white shark. The automotive community never forgave Dodge for this blatant misrepresentation, and the model was eventually discontinued, allowing the Challenger name to hibernate until it could be properly resurrected decades later. Number 19. Isera Imperator 108i 1984-1993. At number 19, we have a car so obscure that even dedicated automotive enthusiasts might scratch their heads. The Isera Imperator 108i was a German supercar with a Mercedes-Benz V8 engine, gull-wing doors, and perhaps its most distinctive feature, a periscope rearview mirror mounted on the roof. Only around 30 Imperators were ever built, making it one of the rarest production vehicles in history. Its fiberglass body housed impressive technology for its time, but its extreme price tag and limited production meant that almost no one ever saw one in person. What makes the Imperator truly weird isn't just its obscurity or its submarine-inspired mirror, it's that the entire company was essentially a one-man operation. Founder Eberhard Schultz designed and built these vehicles as a passion project, creating one of the strangest footnotes in automotive history. The Imperator remains virtually unknown outside the most dedicated car collector circles, despite having performance that could rival Ferraris and Porsches of its era. Number 18. NSU Wankle Spider, 1964. Coming in at number 18 is a vehicle that made history for all the wrong reasons. The NSU Wankle Spider has the distinction of being the first production car ever powered by a rotary Wankle engine, an innovation that would later be perfected by Mazda. Unfortunately, NSU's pioneering attempt was plagued with problems from day one. The tiny rotary engine was innovative, but catastrophically unreliable. Seal failures were common, often requiring complete engine rebuilds before cars had even reached 10,000 miles. NSU offered an unprecedented warranty on the engine, which nearly bankrupted the company as they struggled to keep up with repairs. While the Spider itself was a quirky little convertible that might have found modest success with a conventional engine, its experimental power plant doomed it to failure. NSU's reputation never recovered, and the company was eventually absorbed by Volkswagen. The Spider remains a fascinating example of innovation gone wrong, a vehicle that made history but for reasons no manufacturer would want. Number 17. Fulmobile NWF200 1954. At number 17, we find one of the strangest bubble cars ever produced. The Fulmobile NWF200 was a German microcar with an egg-shaped fiberglass body and dimensions so tiny it barely qualified as an automobile. Powered by a microscopic 9-horsepower engine, the Fulmobile struggled to reach its top speed of 47 miles per hour. Its three-wheel configuration made it notoriously unstable, and its interior was so cramped that average-sized adults could barely fit inside. Only 673 of these curious vehicles were ever produced, and finding one today is nearly impossible. The Fulmobile represents an era when post-war Europe desperately needed affordable transportation, resulting in vehicles that prioritized economy over everything else, including safety, comfort, performance, and basic aesthetic appeal. It's automotive minimalism taken to an absurd extreme. Number 16. Volkswagen Golf Harlequin, 1996. Number 16 on our list isn't necessarily a failure in terms of engineering or performance. It's a bizarre marketing experiment that left most consumers baffled. The Volkswagen Golf Harlequin was a standard fourth-generation Golf with one unmistakable difference. Each body panel was painted a different, bright primary color. Volkswagen produced these multicolored curiosities as a limited edition, with only 264 making their way to the United States. Each Harlequin started life as a single-colored Golf before having its panels swapped with other units in a specific pattern, resulting in a vehicle that looked like it had been assembled from a junkyard of differently colored donor cars. While some collectors now prize these unusual Golfs, most consumers at the time were understandably reluctant to drive what appeared to be an automotive jigsaw puzzle. The Harlequin experiment remains one of the strangest limited editions ever produced by a major manufacturer, a car that performed perfectly well but looked like it had suffered an identity crisis on the assembly line. Number 15. Reliant Robin, 1973 to 2001. At the halfway point of our countdown, we arrive at number 15. Perhaps the most ridiculed vehicle in British automotive history. The Reliant Robin wasn't just unusual, it was downright dangerous. This three-wheeled oddity featured a single wheel at the front and two at the rear, creating a vehicle with all the stability of a drunk toddler. The Robin's tendency to tip over during turns became legendary, eventually featured in a famous Top Gear segment where Jeremy Clarkson rolled one multiple times attempting basic maneuvers. Its fiberglass body offered minimal protection in accidents, which were unfortunately common given its precarious design. Despite these obvious flaws, the Robin remained in production for decades because of a quirk in British law that classified it as a tricycle, meaning it could be driven with a motorcycle license and taxed at a lower rate. This regulatory loophole kept the Robin on British roads for far longer than its safety record should have allowed, cementing its place in automotive history as one of the strangest production vehicles ever sold to an unsuspecting public. If you're finding these automotive disasters fascinating, take a second to hit subscribe. We release new automotive content every week, diving deep into the stories behind the machines that shaped our world, for better or worse. Number 14. Bricklin SV1, 1974 to 1976. Number 14 on our list comes from Canada, proving that automotive disasters know no borders. The Bricklin SV1, Safety Vehicle 1, was the brainchild of Malcolm Bricklin, an entrepreneur who later became infamous for importing Yugos to America. His own creation didn't fare much better. The SV1 featured futuristic gull-wing doors and a body made from colored acrylic fiberglass that was supposedly dent-resistant. While the safety focus was admirable, the execution was disastrous. The gull-wing doors frequently failed, sometimes trapping occupants inside. The dent-proof body panels cracked instead of denting, often requiring complete replacement rather than simple repairs. Production problems plagued the vehicle, with early models suffering from panel gaps large enough to let in rain and wind. Fewer than 3,000 Bricklins were produced before the company went bankrupt, leaving behind a bizarre footnote in automotive history, a safety vehicle that often couldn't even open its own doors. Number 13. Sangyong Rodius, 2004 to 2019. Unlucky number 13 brings us the Sangyong Rodius, a Korean minivan widely considered one of the ugliest production vehicles ever made. Its designer claimed inspiration from luxury yachts, but the result looked more like a car that had been partially melted and then reassembled wrong. The Rodius featured an inexplicable hump on its roof rear, awkward proportions, and a front end that appeared to be grimacing in pain, perhaps aware of its own appearance. Critics were merciless, with one famously describing it as looking like it had been designed by someone who'd never seen a car before. Despite its visual challenges, the Rodius somehow remained in production for 15 years, undergoing a facelift that slightly improved its appearance from horrifying to merely unsettling. It stands as proof that sometimes no amount of focus groups or design reviews can prevent an automotive aesthetic disaster from reaching the public. Number 12. Renault Aventime. At number 12, we find one of the strangest concept vehicles ever to reach production. The Renault Aventime was a French attempt to combine a minivan and a coupe, two vehicle classes that absolutely no one had ever asked to see merged. The result was a two-door, four-seat vehicle with minivan height and length but sports car doors. Those massive doors were so heavy and unwieldy that getting in and out in tight parking spaces was nearly impossible. The Aventime had no B-pillar, which created structural concerns, and its unique proportions made it handle poorly despite sporty pretensions. Consumers were thoroughly confused by the Aventime's purpose, and sales were dismal. Only 8,557 units were sold before production was halted after just 1 year. The Aventime remains a perfect example of automotive innovation without purpose, a solution to a problem no one had. Number 11. Lincoln Blackwood, 2002. Just missing our top 10 at number 11 is a vehicle that lasted a single model year before being unceremoniously canceled. The Lincoln Blackwood was Ford's misguided attempt to create an ultra-luxury pickup truck before the market was ready for such a concept. Based on the Ford F-150, the Blackwood featured a carpeted truck bed with a power tonneau cover, making it completely useless for actual truck purposes. It came only in black, with simulated wood paneling on the bedsides that couldn't even get wet without being damaged. Perhaps most baffling, it was available exclusively with rear-wheel drive, meaning this truck-shaped luxury vehicle couldn't even go off-road. Lincoln sold just 3,356 Blackwoods before pulling the plug, making it one of the shortest-lived production vehicles in American history. The Blackwood's failure didn't stop Lincoln from trying again later with the Mark LT, which was equally unsuccessful. Some concepts are simply ahead of their time, or just terrible ideas altogether. Number 10. Cadillac Catera, 1997 to 2001. Breaking into our top 10 at number 10 is Cadillac's ill-fated attempt to attract younger buyers with a sporty luxury sedan. The Catera was essentially a rebadged Opel Omega B imported from Germany, marketed with the bewildering slogan, "The Caddy That Zigs," and a cartoon duck mascot named Ziggy. Despite Cadillac's sporty marketing, the Catera was underpowered and suffered from numerous reliability issues, including timing belt failures that could destroy the engine. It looked suspiciously like the much cheaper Chevrolet Malibu of the same era, confusing consumers about its premium positioning. Edmunds later ranked the Catera as the 22nd worst car of all time, and sales figures reflected this poor reception. The Catera experiment taught Cadillac valuable lessons about what younger buyers actually wanted, eventually leading to more successful models like the CTS. Sometimes, automotive disasters pave the way for future successes. Number 9. Suzuki X90 1995 to 1997. At number 9, we have what might be the most confused vehicle ever produced. The Suzuki X90 combined elements of an SUV, a sports car, and a convertible, resulting in a vehicle that excelled at nothing and baffled everyone. This tiny two-seater featured removable tops, four-wheel drive, and a trunk so small it could barely hold a couple of grocery bags. It rode too high to handle like a sports car, but was too small to be practical as an SUV. Consumer Reports struggled to even categorize the X90, eventually declaring it the answer to a question nobody asked. Suzuki discontinued the X90 after just 2 years and fewer than 8,000 units sold in the United States. It regularly appears on worst cars ever lists, not necessarily because it was terribly built, but because its very existence seemed to lack any coherent purpose or target market. The X90 remains a perfect example of automotive design by committee gone horribly wrong. Number 8. Vector W8. Our 8th entry is an American supercar that promised to revolutionize the industry, but instead became a cautionary tale. The Vector W8 was developed by Vector Aeromotive Corporation with aerospace-inspired technology and a claimed top speed of 242 miles per hour. Only 17 W8s were ever completed before the company collapsed. Those that were built suffered from abysmal reliability, with examples famously breaking down during press reviews and test drives. The car's interior featured aircraft-inspired digital displays and switches that were innovative but impractical. What makes the W8 particularly tragic is that it represented American ambition to compete with European supercar manufacturers, but its failure reinforced stereotypes about American cars being unable to match European quality and refinement. Despite its rarity making it valuable to collectors today, the Vector W8 stands as one of the most spectacular failures in supercar history. If you're enjoying this automotive train wreck of a countdown, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more automotive history, restoration projects, and industry analysis coming your way every week. Number 7. Sterling 825 and 827, 1987-1991. At number 7, we have a British invasion that Americans quickly repelled. The Sterling 825 and 827 were essentially rebadged Rover 800 series cars, themselves based on the Acura legend. This automotive matryoshka doll of badge engineering was meant to give British Leyland a foothold in the American luxury market. Despite sharing mechanical components with the highly reliable Acura legend, Sterling vehicles suffered from atrocious build quality and electrical problems that seemed almost supernatural in their frequency and unpredictability. Dashboard materials warped in hot weather, leather seats cracked, and electrical gremlins plagued nearly every unit sold. Edmunds later ranked the Sterling as the 68th worst car of all time, and sales collapsed after initial interest. The brand withdrew from the American market after just 4 years, selling fewer than 35,000 cars total. The Sterling debacle remains a textbook example of how poor execution can ruin even the most promising platform. Number 6. FSO Palones, 1978 to 2002. Number 6 takes us behind the former Iron Curtain for a vehicle that symbolized the problems with communist-era manufacturing. The FSO Palones was a Polish family car based on the already outdated Fiat 125P, featuring angular 1970s styling that remained unchanged for decades. The Polonese's build quality was notoriously terrible, with inconsistent panel gaps, frequent breakdowns, and an interior that seemed designed to maximize driver and passenger discomfort. Jeremy Clarkson once described its quality as a dog's dinner, noting that parts would frequently fall off during normal driving. Despite these obvious flaws, the Polones remained in production for 24 years with minimal updates, a testament to the lack of consumer choice in planned economies. When finally discontinued in 2002, the Polonaise had become a rolling anachronism, virtually unchanged from its 1970s origins, while the automotive world had advanced by decades. Number 5. Leilen P76, 1973 to 1975. Halfway through our top 10 at number 5 is Australia's most notorious automotive failure. The Leilen P76 was meant to be the large Australian, a locally designed and built competitor to Holden and Ford's popular full-size sedans. Instead, it became a national embarrassment. Despite winning Motor Magazine's Car of the Year award in 1973, the P76 quickly developed a reputation for poor build quality, with doors that wouldn't close properly, dashboards that fell apart, and electrical systems that seemed designed by sadists. Its styling was controversial at best, with one critic describing it as looking like it had been beaten with an ugly stick. Production lasted just 2 years before Leilen pulled the plug, with fewer than 20,000 units sold. The P76 has since become something of a cultural touchstone in Australia, shorthand for a spectacular and highly public failure. In a cruel twist, surviving examples are now sought after by collectors precisely because so few remain intact. Number 4. VAZ2101 or Lotiva 1970 to 2013. Our fourth-place entry is a car so bad it transcended its awfulness to achieve a kind of perverse immortality. The VAZ2101, later known as the Lotiva in export markets, was a Soviet-built clone of the Fiat 124 that remained in production with minimal changes for over 40 years. The Lotta combined the worst aspects of 1960s Italian engineering with Soviet manufacturing quality, creating vehicles that were outdated when new and bordered on dangerous after a few years of use. Top Gear's Jeremy Clarkson famously called it the worst car in the world, noting its terrible handling, pathetic performance, and tendency to rust almost immediately. Despite these glaring flaws, over 20 million were produced, making it one of the most numerically successful cars on our list. Its simplicity meant it could be repaired with basic tools and even household items, a necessity given its tendency to break down constantly. The Lotiva remains the vehicular embodiment of the Soviet approach to consumer goods, functional, obsolete, and devoid of joy. Number 3. Subaru 360 1968 to 1970. Breaking into our top 3 is a Japanese microcar that found unexpected and unwelcome fame in America. The Subaru 360 was already tiny by Japanese standards, but when entrepreneur Malcolm Bricklin imported it to the United States, it looked like a children's toy among the massive American cars of the late 1960s. With a minuscule 356cc engine producing just 25 horsepower, the 360 took an agonizing 37.5 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour, assuming it could reach that speed at all. Consumer Reports deemed it unacceptably hazardous, noting that a slight crosswind could push it into another lane. Despite an ad campaign promoting it as cheap and ugly, American consumers weren't convinced. The 360's failure nearly killed Subaru in North America before it had really established itself. Ironically, this disaster forced Subaru to rethink its approach to the American market, eventually leading to the rugged, practical vehicles that would later bring the company success. Number 2. Nash Austin Metropolitan 1954 to 1962. Our runner-up is a transatlantic oddity that pleased neither American nor British drivers. The Nash Metropolitan, later sold as the Austin Metropolitan, was designed in America but built in England, creating a vehicle with conflicting design philosophies and poor execution of both. This tiny car featured cartoonish styling that made it look like a carnival ride rather than serious transportation. Its 1.2-liter engine struggled to move the car with any urgency, and its handling was described by critics as dangerously unpredictable at highway speeds. Art critic Brian Sewell memorably called it one of the nastiest cars ever built. The Metropolitan sold just over 9,300 units in Europe, where small cars were the norm, but this American-designed oddity still couldn't find acceptance. In America, it was simply too small and underpowered for highways and sprawling suburbs. The Metropolitan remains a perfect example of how a failure to understand different market needs can doom a vehicle on both sides of the Atlantic. Number 1. Triumph Mayflower, 1949 to 1953. And finally, we arrive at number 1, the strangest, most failed car you've likely never heard about. The Triumph Mayflower stands as a monument to automotive miscalculation, a vehicle so bizarre in concept and terrible in execution that it deserves the top spot on our countdown. Triumph designed the Mayflower with what they called razor-edge styling, attempting to give a tiny car the dignified appearance of a Rolls-Royce. The result was a vehicle that looked like a full-size luxury car that had been accidentally shrunk in the wash. Famous automotive journalist James May didn't mince words, calling it simply the ugliest car ever made. Under its peculiar exterior sat an anemic 1.25-liter engine producing just 38 horsepower, giving the Mayflower a top speed of only 66 miles per hour. Handling was poor, reliability was questionable, and the styling made owners the subject of ridicule rather than envy. Only 510 Mayflowers ever made it to North America, where they were met with confusion and derision. Production mercifully ended after just 4 years and around 35,000 units globally. The Mayflower represents the perfect automotive failure, a car with no target audience, solving no problems, satisfying no desires, and eventually vanishing into well-deserved obscurity. Now that you've seen the automotive world's biggest disasters, you're probably wondering which cars you should actually consider owning. After witnessing these spectacular failures, you deserve to know about vehicles that won't leave you stranded or become a punchline. Click the link on screen now to watch 20 cars so reliable you'll never regret buying them, where I reveal the polar opposite of everything you just saw. Vehicles so dependable, they'll still be running long after these automotive disasters have been crushed into scrap metal.